Live from the 607 is the ODPH Entertainment Edition, where we're talking movies, comics, TV, and more. Why don't you join in the conversation? Hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to another edition of the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. I am your host, Ken M. Joining me in studio, as always, it's Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
Folks, we have a lot to discuss in the land of entertainment, so let's waste no more time, shall we? Hit us up on our social media accounts. You can find them at OchoDuroParlayHour.com. Hit us up with the hashtag ODPH. Join in the conversation, because we want to hear from you. It's been kind of a quieter week in the land of entertainment, but still some noteworthy discussion we're going to have, and let's kick it off by recapping the latest Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, going into the post-Avengers summer, a lot of, Marvel has been kind of quiet.
They're waiting for San Diego Comic-Con.
Absolutely. So, everything has just been kind of, building for something, and Agents is finally getting their payoff as they do their slow burn going into their Season 6. I don't know if it's going to be the partial season, but it's a short season regardless. So, we are going to be talking spoilers. So in 3, 2, 1, Pad, what did you think of the episode?
Love the episode, roller coaster of emotions.
Absolutely. They decided to tug at the heartstrings of anybody who has followed the romance of Fitz and Simmons throughout the years.
I mean, and not just that. I mean, just if you haven't watched the show all the way through, like you've jumped on and jumped off a couple of seasons. I mean, if you have a heart, you felt some emotions.
Right, because this definitely hit every loyal fan or even some new fans that just have jumped on in recent seasons. Definitely in their emotions with this one because this was such a well-done episode. Because as they did the recap, Enoch has sold out Fitz to the Chronicoms, and he's been finally reunited with Simmons, who sacrificed herself to have Team Quake escape. So now they're finally reunited. The payoff is finally there. And as we kick off in the episode, Atara is explaining how the home planet of the Chronicoms was destroyed.
Yep.
And Simmons now has a very awkward moment with Fitz.
Yeah, just a bit.
Because she has to explain their time travel to the future. And Fitz obviously is very unaware of everything that has been going on.
Right, because as Fitz knew it, she being Simmons and the whole agent's team had gone into the future, and he was trying to get to him, and obviously he got pulled out of it, and up to this point. So, he doesn't know she's still alive, she's around and trying to find him. So there's a lot of catching up they got to do, and not all of it she wants to tell him.
No, because this is coming off the heels of Fitz proposing, which we saw last season prior to Fitz's intimate death.
Yeah.
Asterisk, because comics.
Which, admittedly, I forgot about that. Because, when I'm watching the episode and he's proposing to her, I'm like, she's really nonchalant about this. Why is that? And then you get later in the episode, I'm like, oh, wait, that's right. She's been through this once already.
Right. I mean, when Fitz made his dramatic entrance to save the team last season, he did it right then and there. And obviously, the emotions for Simmons is torn at this point. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah.
Because obviously she says yes, and then they're recapping about how they were looking for each other. And Simmons is dodging talking about the future / past. I mean, however you want to define it.
Yeah.
But the moment of time when Fitz is in the future and what happens after that, she is really trying to avoid. Now, it's not for the sense of disrupting the timeline, which I was thinking that was.
Right.
But it was just more of the sense of she doesn't want to go through those emotions and what impact this is going to have on him.
I think it might have partially been she didn't want to disrupt the timeline, but I feel like it was also at the same time, she could have gotten away with it. It's nothing major that, I know there's a comedy video going around online of, Captain America's life once he returned back in time and how he's living through all the major events in world history, from the 1950s up through modern times. And it's every time a major incident comes up and Peggy Carter asks him, oh, what do you think is going to happen with this? And he goes, he starts eating food or something like that. Okay, you got to be careful not with the timeline. This, though, I feel like it's a pretty safe bet to all right, you can know nothing's really going to happen because it's already changed.
In theory. See, this is where time travel always gets weird. And especially for Marvel right now, because obviously with what happened with Endgame, and if you haven't seen Endgame by now, it's getting re-released to theaters this weekend, so definitely get down there. But we are talking spoilers.
In every country.
Yeah, well, we're talking spoilers with that, because what happens when the Avengers mess with the time stream, there are some loopholes that possibly have reset some instances. Loki is running loose, and potentially in his time period. Captain America going back in time, that's a big question mark what happened there. So obviously Simmons doesn't know anything about this.
Right.
but she does know that telling Fitz about what happens could have a direct impact on their future, especially now that she knows she is a grandparent with Deke.
Yep.
So who knows what's going to happen there. But as she's trying to really avoid telling him about the future, this is where the episode takes a quick turn, dare I say.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, as they're in their alien prison, which they're allowed their heart's desire concerning science and whatever technology it is to tell Atara how to go back in time. At this point, she says, if you escape, you're going to be trapped in your mind. And during this whole argument with Fitz, Simmons reverts back to baby Gemma.
Well, and before
kid Gemma, I should say.
And before this, aren't they told that like your minds and memories are linked? And Gemma is like red alarms going off in her head, like, wait, are we sure this is a good idea? Because obviously she's keeping some secrets from Fitz, and she doesn't want him to know.
Right. So at this point, this is where the episode really picks up.
This was brilliant.
This was brilliantly done. I have to agree with you on that, Pat, because now child Gemma escapes into her own memories and winds up back in her bedroom,
childhood home,
and where Fitz comes in and he's kind of going like, okay, what's going on here? And this is where we see the linked memories match up. So Fitz is finding out some somewhat secrets of Simmons' past.
Yeah.
And then he also kind of reverts into having an argument because once he gets Simmons to revert back after he kind of talks her into leaving that memory, they start having a super argument.
Yeah.
And when Fitz threatens, do you want me to bring Ada out? I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And Ada, as in the LMD who nearly killed the team in season 4, which was amazing. Simmons decides to go, okay, hold my beer, so to speak.
Yeah.
And decides to show him the moment where the team finds Fitz in his body bag.
You want to know what happened? Here you go.
Exactly. And this is where Fitz sees himself and seeing how the team reacts as he's inside the body bag. And then when he sees a dying Coulson emerge from his bed to see, Coulson come and check and see what happened. This is where the episode really hits you in the gut. This is where it was just like, oh.
It was like every sequence that happened was just like a knife twist in your gut. Like, if, you get the first initial stab and it's like, oh, that's rough. And then it's just each following sequence is just more rough.
Yeah, and especially if you know how the team interacts and if you've been watching since day one like we have. This is a super payoff for like a long-term fan. And it's, like I said, if you have joined during season 4, which I highly recommend, that's your starting point if you need to jump in. Season 4, season 5, you definitely get that emotional impact out of the scene. Because as Coulson is dying and he's checking on Fitz and it's the death scene and Fitz is reacting to knowing that he dies. And I mean, how much of just a mind-blowing moment is that you know that you don't make it after all the work that you've been doing, trying to freeze yourself, going to the future, the whole nine with that it's almost all for nothing. Almost, because he doesn't know that he saves the team and then inadvertently saves the world in X, Y, and Z. So at this moment, it's just one of the best acted scenes they've done where he just knows, and this is just where every part of emotion hits. And then suddenly they just revert to their early school days at the SHIELD Academy and where they first meet each other. But this is where things get very interesting too. Like I said, when they start going into the memories, it's really where the episode finds its, dare I say, meat of the episode, the real impactful parts. This is where Simmons starts hearing something like a knocking or marching.
Yep.
And she is the only one that realizes that the mainframe is coming.
Oh boy.
Or the framework rather.
Yeah.
And it's Leopold.
It's like a rash. It just won't go away.
No, but this was, if you've seen season 4 when you meet Leopold, arguably one of the best villains they've had on the show.
Oh yeah, no, I mean Leopold showed up and I uttered, "Oh son of a," well, you can fill in the blank.
Right, because once you see him appear on screen, you're going, okay, this episode has just taken a turn up to 11. Which was brilliant because you somehow forget during all this time travel that, Leopold is still in there, which is, if you're not familiar with the show, and if I'll say a minor spoiler, it is a side of Fitz that is definitely the complete opposite of Fitz.
I'll say it's kind of like when Superman is exposed to red kryptonite and he, like, the worst of him gets brought out. It's kind of the same thing.
Right. So when Leopold is coming, Simmons is reliving the nightmare and she goes back to her childhood room. And then you hear a musical box fall off the desk. Now, Fitz is kind of looking at the situation as they're running together and going, what is the importance of this? Because Simmons is starting to act very odd. And at this point, suddenly they shift after the box is opened, and they wind up back at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base.
Mm-hmm.
And Fitz is, at this point, the episode is jumping so much. Fitz is, and like most of the viewers, they're going, okay, wait, what's going on? Like, hold up, and recapping, because he's like, okay, we're running from the framework, we're running from everybody. We wind up at S.H.I.E.L.D., which is the most obvious place that they'll come and find us, which is so interesting to see how it does. And then once we flip again to the first day Fitz and Simmons meet Coulson, which is a nice little memory, suddenly it jumps back to where Leopold finally catches Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Fitz is now running from a creature that was unleashed from said music box, which looks like it was straight out of the movie The Ring.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a mix. It's a mix of Simmons and The Ring,
which is just like a combination I really didn't need in my life, but thanks anyway.
Yeah, which was such a very unique perspective to do, because it's where Simmons was explaining during the child room scene that this is where she used to put the monsters to hide and you almost keep it like a Pandora's box, which was interesting for a play at the time. But now her worst nightmares have now been unleashed. And when you have a demon Simmons, which is just weird to say, now running through and trying to kill everybody, this is where the episode is going definitely off the rails a little bit.
I mean, but we've been seeing that for a couple episodes now. Don't forget, there was the one episode that was like half of it was like from a Ridley Scott alien movie.
Right. And they definitely do borrow from a lot of pop culture and geek culture, so to speak, when they're doing their, dare I say, when they step outside the box to do some certain episodes. This was no exception. And at this point, too, you see Enoch with Atara and really Enoch's trying to talk him out of like keeping him in prison like this, and he's just very worried about Fitz, because at the end of the day, Enoch is actually genuinely caring for him.
Yeah.
And what he does is he takes a very big gamble, and he takes out everybody trying to free them, and it doesn't exactly go the way he wants. He tries saving them, but he just doesn't, because at this point, Leopold and, do we just call her Ring Gemma?
Sure.
Have finally captured everybody involved, and they're torturing everybody. Where you see Leopold is having a very awkward conversation with Simmons, very cold and disturbing, which I completely love how Ian DeCastecker flips between Leopold and Fitz.
Yeah, it's a great acting job on his part too, because like they're very much two separate, different characters. Where Fitz is the team player and sort of a romantic when it comes to Simmons, but he'll do what needs to get done and he'll lay his life on the line for the sacrifice, but like. Leopold is like, screw you. I'm going to do what I need to, and I don't care who I run over if I have to do it.
Right. And at this point, you see that Ring Gemma is absolutely torturing Fitz, and at one point, it does rip his heart out.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah, which is a interpretation of how Simmons does react when they have their fights. Because the one thing from this episode is you see their ups and you see their downs, and you see where they're knockdown, drag-out fights, but you see how they come together because they're in love with each other, and how they just find a way to make it happen. It's their mantra of, it's us against the universe.
Yeah.
And they take everybody. Until they both finally realize, well, if this is our memories, well, we do have allies we can call in.
Yeah, I would say it's like when you're in a dream and every once in a while you may experience a lucid dream where like you're able to control things. It's almost the same thing where it's like, oh yeah, we're getting put through hell and high water just for this. Oh wait, this is our memories. We can control this to a certain degree.
And at that point, they call in the cavalry. Not literally, because they did not call in Agent May, but they did call Mac and they did call Quaken, which definitely shout out to Mac for bringing back the shotgun axe.
Yes,
which is such a amazing weapon.
Top 5 Marvel weapon. Don't even try convincing me otherwise.
Exactly. You can add us on OD Parlay Hour if you want on Twitter, but the shotgun axe is so good. And as you see him taking care of Ring Gemma, you see that Quake shows up and starts fighting with Leopold, and definitely the backup is there, and it's just a really cool moment where they go and they save each other. And then they find themselves trapped in the containment unit that they've trapped multiple characters on throughout the years. And Fitz and Simmons just are having it out. On the outside, you see Leopold and Ring Gemma are fighting. They're just trying to get in, and they're seeing that, well, our memories are getting destroyed because they're taking both of them out. And this is where they have such the only way I could describe it is it's an awkward married exchange.
Yeah.
Because they start going through every single moment throughout their history where there's been bad. And we're talking about when Simmons wound up on the alien planet by herself.
Yeah.
And that whole messy situation that ultimately led to a member of Hive, or no, I believe it was the character Hive, coming to Earth and, going with the Team Hydra there and the Secret Warriors saga and that whole nonsense. And then obviously Ada comes back up in that conversation too. And this is where it's a great moment, but it's just it's a married couple moment.
Yeah, it's like you're angry at each other, and the filter you would normally have where you wouldn't say certain things, like keep them in your head, is pulled away, and just every wrong thing you wouldn't want to normally say is coming out.
Right. So at this point too, they somehow flip it on Leopold and Ring Gemma, which that has to be one of the. I guess I would say this was kind of a letdown for me that they wind up hooking up and are having a weird exchange on that. Aspect. Just considering how the episode was, because there were such real threats, and it just went super humorous out of nowhere, which I get. I'm not angry about, but I was like, oh, come on. I wanted something else to happen here other than just Ring Gemma is just eating everybody and then she disappears, because once they find out the key to getting through, which was just, combining their minds into just the unstoppable force, so to speak, Enoch frees them. He somehow gets a hold of taking everybody out of the Chronicoms and frees them, and then they make their escape. And at this point, too, Simmons decides to drop the ball of, oh, your grandfather Fitz.
Yeah.
And fade to black.
Yeah.
Which
great timing for that.
Absolute great timing. And then when they come back for the bonus scene, too, Mac is relieved to hear from Quake about Fitzsimmons are still together, and he's like, I'm not worried about them. Those two will take on the universe and win, so we're good. We have more pressing issues happening. He is now debriefing Quake about Sarge.
Yeah.
And he drops the bombshell that Sarge is the one who destroyed the Chronicom planet. So overall, solid episode.
Yeah.
If you're a Fitzsimmons fan, you definitely got more out of this than not.
So you were over the moon.
Yeah, Pat, final thoughts on the episode?
A great episode, lots of Fitzsimmons action, which I'm always a fan of. It was great to finally see them together. It was also great to see so many callbacks to previous seasons and kind of, like you said, a little bit of a payoff. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, Liz Hemstridge did a great job with this episode, too. And obviously, going through her memories of the character of Gemma Simmons, you definitely see where her acting skills are just superb. And you can go back to that episode that she was on the planet by herself if you really want to see her best work on the show. I mean, how she did not get nominated for an Emmy for that episode.
Yeah.
Just that episode alone was mind-blowing to me. But I digress. But to see the saga of Fitzsimmons now take their next step and whatever's going to happen with them in the future, because they're light years away. We don't know what's going to happen if Fitz comes back to Earth. What does that do to reset the timeline? Because something's going to happen. A lot more questions were answered, but a lot more were raised. But overall, great episode. Definitely liking to see where they're going, because the mid-season finale or season finale, I don't know how you want to define
it's 13 episodes for this season.
Right. However you want to define that 13th episode is coming very quickly. So we're going to kind of have to jump in on that and see how the saga of Coulson / Sarge and company plays out. But definitely let us know what you think. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What is your thoughts on this past week's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Rob Kacharik from the band 607, Autopilot Off, and Walking Distance, and you're listening to ODPH.
Coming back for another segment on this edition of the ODPH podcast. Now, as we said, it's been kind of a quiet week with Marvel and most of the movies, because next week, obviously, they're gearing up for Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yep.
We're going to get into that next segment. But this week is very important for comic book movie history.
Yes.
Why is that, Pat?
It is the 30th anniversary of Tim Burton's Batman movie coming out in theaters.
Exactly. This movie, when it came out, starring Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, Jack Nicholson was the Joker. Tim Burton definitely took a very unique version of Gotham City to the big screen. And to know the history of this movie is truly phenomenal, because at the time, there really wasn't the current, dare I say, comic book surplus movies that we just have so many of them out. Because the only time at this point was more or less the Christopher Reeve Supermans.
Which hadn't happened in a while.
No, it didn't happen for a while, and obviously at this point, too, is right around when they had Superman The Quest for Peace, which was arguably the worst one of the bunch. So for when Batman came out into movie theaters, at this time, it was really almost unheard of that you had a superhero movie come out. Because I know the Adam West super or Batman universe.
Right.
They had their own quote unquote movie, and you just really never heard anything about this. So when you heard about the Tim Burton version coming out of nowhere, this was a big deal.
Yeah.
And the marketing for this, the Bat logo was everywhere. At that time, you could not escape it.
No.
So when this movie came out, and now, Pat, you've seen this movie.
Yes.
I've seen this movie. What was your initial take on this?
I thought it was a very interesting take because you look at prior to that, and obviously there had been some TV shows and other type of stuff with various superheroes, but particularly with the movies, you look at like the most recent thing there had been in the Superman movies, and listen, as much as I am a Superman fan, there are parts of those movies that are a little hokey. Like, yes, I get there's the 70s and there's the 80s, but, you know, we're going to undo time and undo what happened wrong by flying backwards and recorrect the Earth's rotation and then put it everything, you know, yeah, it's a little hokey. But when you look at the Batman movie, it's so, you know, no pun intended, it's so night and day compared to what you're used to seeing with the Superman stuff. So you might have gone into there thinking, all right, what are we going to get out of this? Is this going to be like something somewhat serious, or is this going to be more hokey?
No, I definitely thought when Tim Burton took this over, I really wasn't sure what to expect, except I thought it was going to be kind of more on the darker side. And it was not going to be like the Superman movies that we had known from Christopher Reeve. This was going to be something that when it hit the screen, who knows what we're going to get.
Yeah.
And the version we got was very unique, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne was definitely an interesting take on the character. Because the one thing that Keaton did is he really showed how psychologically fragile Batman is. And I thought that was very interesting to see, that the sense that he changed his voice, he did little nuances here and there, but he definitely showed that just the character of Bruce Wayne, so to speak, is still, no matter how old he is, still dealing with the trauma of losing his parents and how he did and what caused that. I mean, obviously they stayed away from the majority of the comic origin of Batman.
Right.
They didn't go near Ra's al Ghul or anything like that.
Right.
It's just, you know, his parents got killed, and obviously they just fast forward to when Batman is starting out and he runs into Jack Napier, who's a criminal, you know, I don't want to say mastermind by any means, but, you know, they're pulling off the heist at Ace Chemicals and, you know, look what happens, and he winds up causing the Joker and Jack Nicholson's portrayal. At the time, you really had never seen such a, I don't want to say disturbing version of the Joker, but for that time period, you had never seen a take like that.
Oh, so you got to remember the last time a lot of people had seen any live action portrayal of the Joker was, like you said, the Adam West Batman TV series, and that was Cesar Romero.
Right. That whole show was great for its time. Yeah. Very campy, very fun, very, you know, over the top with a lot of their things. Yeah. And it worked. Not saying that version's bad by any means, but when you deal with this one in the 80s too, because at this point, this is where DC, in my opinion, was kind of starting to write more grittier heroes, grittier stories. Yeah. You start seeing, you know, the change of the typical, you know, superhero storyline. I mean, this is right around the time when Watchmen's around. Give take. So at this point, this is where it really jumps out, and you really start seeing the change of characters and the change of guard. And to see Keaton's portrayal, like I said, it did show a definitive change from what we knew from Batman. Yeah. And like I said, his version of Batman is very good. Like, for me, I'm a Christian Bale fan, and for that, like, for me, that's my Batman. Yeah. But I don't knock him when somebody says I think Keaton's better, because you know what? It's up there. It definitively is. And to just go through his emotions too, because I mean, even at the one point, which I'm sorry, we're gonna be talking spoilers. The movie's been out for 30 years. So just giving fair warning now. When he has that little standoff with the Joker, and he's like, "Yeah, let's get nuts, let's get crazy," and like you kind of see, like, Batman doesn't usually do that. No. So to see him just react and just kind of let his emotions out, you really kind of get the sense of it was just something very, very different. And something we had not seen, because as we've seen later portrayals throughout the years, I mean, obviously Keaton did it for 2 films, and then went to Val Kilmer for 1, George Clooney for another, not even addressing those. And then to see Christian Bale do it, and then more recently Ben Affleck, you've seen every character every actor that's played Batman really do something different. But
can't forget to mention Kevin Conroy.
Well, that's true, which is a whole different animal in its own right. But he definitely deserves to be in that conversation for who's the best Batman. Yeah. Without question. So when you start factoring that in, this is where Batman really stood out, because Keaton works so well with Tim Burton too. Yeah. That this is just something that it really stood out, and really was, you know, just a different version. I mean, the soundtrack to this was just, it made everything just sound that much more, grander and just more serious, and just the tone was so different. And then to flip it too with Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker. I mean, you didn't see this on screen anywhere else, where he was very cold but very still unpredictable, which is the Joker to the letter. I mean, this is where it comes out. I mean, when you start thinking the Joker, what would you describe his portrayal as?
It's just unpredictable. Like, you never, like, no matter what version you see of him, be it, most recently with Jared Leto, or even with in the Christian Bale movies, or even in this movie, like we're talking, or even in the Batman and the Animated Series, you never know what the guy's going to do. You think you've got it figured, and you know the old Scooby-Doo. Oh, I know what the bad guy's going to do. I know how to stop him. But then he throws in a wild card, or a hook in the plan, and it just goes completely the other way.
Right. This is where Nicholson really defined the Joker. And in my opinion, this is where the Joker's popularity really took off.
Yeah.
Because he'd always been the Batman's number one villain, and I don't ever question that. He is the number one. But when Nicholson portrayed the Joker, he took that character and rose it to a whole different level of pop culture.
Right, because you got to remember, like before with Cesar Romero, okay, people like Cesar Romero's portrayal of the Joker, but it was kind of like goofy, slapstick, haha, I'm going to throw a water balloon at you and then run off screen. Whereas you look at Jack Nicholson's portrayal and just like, all right, what's this crazy guy going to do next?
Right. Because, I mean, he's just so very common in his maniac style, too, which was the real funny thing to me. I mean, no pun intended, because of the Joker.
Right.
But, like, even when you get to that point where he's seeing Batman escape, he's like, where do you get all those wonderful toys? And just lines like that, which, I mean, they didn't have to be over the top for shock value.
No.
Just so calm and cool, but yet at the point so absolutely crazy that you would think, okay, this villain at the time he's worried about what he's escaping with. Like I said, it was just such a nice counterbalance to Keaton's acting on this.
Yeah.
That it just really stood out. Because like I said, and I've read a couple other reviews too, and they say the same thing too, when you see Keaton's portrayal, just how psychologically damaged he is. And everybody keeps referencing too about the point where he just finally breaks down, and you see him get on that level, so to speak,
right,
with the Joker, when he's like, yeah, let's get nuts, let's get... And he's like, you don't see that from Batman ever. You never really saw that from Bruce Wayne.
No.
You've always seen him be the guy that's in control. And this is where you really see the Joker push him to the limit.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can get Batman to go to that level with the Joker, where he's almost accepting his crazy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Almost. And I mean this in the sense of, like, if you've ever read The Killing Joke by Alan Moore.
Yeah.
Where all the Joker is trying to do is get Batman to laugh in that episode, or that comic. Which, if you've never read it, it's a masterpiece. It's disturbing as all hell.
Yeah.
But just the fact that he finally gets it, you sense that just how they're just different sides of a coin in that aspect. And this movie really portrayed it. And we hadn't seen a remake like that. Obviously, when Heath Ledger took the character over, completely different direction.
Yeah.
Which is impossible to even think of, too, if
right.
you really want to break it down. But, I mean, this movie had everything you wanted to see from Batman. And, I mean, almost to the point where you never really saw him shine too much of his detective skills, per se.
No.
I mean, here and there. I mean, he definitely did use it.
You saw glimpses of it here and there, but it wasn't like, a Sherlock Holmes type thing where I'm going to go solve the crime and I'm going to analyze the evidence with the Bat computer. No, there were elements of it, though. Right,
but you did see everything that makes Batman who he is.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, with the traumatic memories of his parents and just his thirst for justice, and just whichever way he just finds to save Gotham, and just the imagery of this.
And I thought that was the brilliant thing on the filmmaker's part to, not get so bogged down with backstory and everything and making it like a real comic book origin movie like you might see today. They kind of kept it grounded in, okay, we're going in assuming most people know who Batman is, and if they don't know who he is, they've at least heard of him and they know the origin story. Let's keep it bare bones and just keep it focused on the big guy.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what you really need to do. You don't need to go over the top in retelling origins, and everybody knows Batman's.
Yeah,
he's one of the most popular superheroes in the world, and you can have that argument with anybody. But just to see how Burton did this and how he made Gotham into, just a very dark, gloomy, but yet artistic place to be at. And just the imagery he used. I mean, everything from when he shot the Batwing up into the moon and you had the overall symbol appear. I mean, just a little stuff like that. It was just so creative to go. That obviously the movie really turned some eyes onto the character and kind of gave him new life, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Batman had always been relevant, but to that level, hard to say.
Right.
But at that point, too, you saw the Batman logo everywhere. I mean, you could not escape. The marketing for this movie really showed that, yeah, you could do a superhero movie. And, I mean, going into the late 80s, into the 90s. Obviously, they did not decide to go further with it, per se. They did do Batman Returns with Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. And definitely was a little different than what we were expecting from the original sequel, or from the original movie. It was, and for me, I did not care for it as much.
Right.
And I'll be honest about it. But overall, it really kind of set the tone that you could do superhero movies. People will watch. People will go to them.
Yeah.
That you can definitely capture an audience with it. Because if Batman failed, let's throw it this way. Let's say it bombed at the box office. Pat, what do you think that would have been lasting effects?
I think we wouldn't have comic book movies as we know them today because, yes, while X-Men does get and Spider-Man do get a lot of credit for kind of jump-starting the comic book movies as we know them today, I don't think those movies get made if Batman is not as commercially successful as he is now. Granted, yeah, he had some later failings in terms of like overall numbers with movies, Batman and Robin and what have you, but they were still somewhat successful and they made a fair amount of money. I think if all of the Batman movies hadn't have been as well done or well received and made as much money as they did, the folks at Fox and Sony wouldn't have even considered for 30 seconds to make an X-Men movie or a Spider-Man movie. I think they would have gone, Warner Brothers did a Batman movie years ago and that bombed. Now this is like hypothetical alternate universe, where Batman bombs at the box office. If Fox is, because I think that one, the X-Men came out before Spider-Man, or roughly after around the same time. But if Fox is sitting there in their boardroom with all the big executives going, all right, what are we going to do for our next movie? And someone goes, well, we got a director here. He wants to use one of the Marvel properties we have. They want to do an X-Men movie. And you get one of the executives at the round table going, oh, you want to do a comic book movie? Why would we do a comic book movie? You had Warner Brothers years ago take Batman movie, who was far more recognizable than X-Men are, and you can argue that till the cows come home, and it bombed. Why would we even attempt to do it? So I think to the main point though, if Batman wasn't successful as it was, Warner Brothers, Sony, and Fox wouldn't have even attempted the other ones or even considered them.
Right, and to clarify too, X-Men came out in 2000. Spider-Man,
That's what I thought.
Sam Raimi won 2002.
That's what I thought.
But either way, no, you're exactly right, because if that movie bombed, we would never have had a sequel, let alone, I don't want to say 4, but you definitely think since Batman has come to the big screen that there had been the 4 that started, and then you had the 3 more after. And then going into the next version.
Right.
Unless you want to count Batman versus Superman in that mix, which, I mean, that's up to you if you want to do. Because once that Burton walked away from the film franchise, so did Keaton. I mean, obviously it was taken over by Joel Schumacher. Val Kilmer stepped in, and it went more to a mix of what Burton wanted to do, per se, but it went definitely to the Adam West universe. And you took from everything that Burton built up and just really flipped it on its side. And I mean, Batman Forever was an interesting movie. I liked it. Batman and Robin, not so much. I mean, that movie...
I liked it as a kid, although I was an innocent kid at the time.
Right, but if you want to take a look at a movie that when it bombed, look how far it set back the franchise.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to go near Batman until Christopher Nolan decided to say, we need to bring Batman back to where he is most relatable.
There have even been recent interviews where people have talked to George Clooney about Batman and Ben Affleck and the whole thing, and even Clooney has come out in recent interviews and said, listen, no, even I'll admit that was a bad movie.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it went so far away from the character, because where Burton took his interpretation of the character, I mean, it was almost spot on, but it definitely focused more on the traumatic side of Bruce Wayne and just how he was trying to live up to his parents' legacy that he wanted, his version of it. That that he wanted to make their deaths be more meaningful. That this was going to cause his unrelenting battle for justice.
Right, and there's 2 things I do want to mention about this movie. That one, I'm remiss that we didn't get to see this play out. Billy D. Williams, of course, did play Harvey Dent, so I'm a little angry we never got to see Billy D. as Two-Face, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah,
Billy D. cool as it can be. It also gave my personal Alfred. Like, if you ever ask me who's your Alfred, this is the gentleman I think of over anybody else, and that's Michael Goff.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that's Alfred. Like, no disrespect to anyone who has played him or will play him. You're never going to top Michael Goff for me.
No, that movie had so many iconic moments in it, and just how Burton's version started. That obviously Batman Returns was, I don't know. I mean, I don't like saying letdown, but it was definitely not the same magic, in my opinion, that Batman 89 had. It just didn't. And it's nothing against Burton and everybody involved with it. It was just, I think at that point, the success of Batman was just, it was, the hype behind it was just maybe overwhelming. And for my version of it, I guess. Because just looking back, and like I know I keep harping about it, everything about this film was just perfect for the time it was in, and definitely ushered in the start of superhero movies really taking hold at the box office. Now, granted, the 90s, not exactly the best time period for those.
No.
I mean, you can take your range of any superhero movies that wasn't involved technically with Marvel and DC at the time that was made, and just how much they struggled, because they did. I don't even want to get into that lineage. But once Batman was kind of on the back burner, this is what Marvel jumped in, and their properties were finally starting to go into fruition, because, I mean, this was nowhere near to where the MCU is now.
No.
Because everybody had different properties at different studios, and obviously when the X-Men came out, and just how that reinvigorated that franchise and really kind of brought eyes back to the superhero world, it was something to see. But without Batman kicking in that door in 89, this doesn't happen.
No.
And I do have to plug the comic book adaptation with Dennis O'Neil and Jerry Ordway. If you have not read that, if you like your comics, that is one of the best adaptations from film you'll see. Because they literally just, how they watched the film and just, made that into a masterpiece comic is truly astonishing. I have to fully plug that, because it was great. But dare I say, Pat, what do you think is the final legacy of Batman 89?
I think its legacy is that it is one of the seminal moments in comic book movie history where, like, you talk to comic book movie fans, that you talk about, what are some of the greatest comic book movies of all time? And while the lists may vary, inevitably that movie is going to be in the top 5, if not top 3, for most fans.
I have to agree. Batman 89, as we'll just call it, definitely is a historic movie for comic book fans, for pop culture fans, for fans of movies in general. I mean, how they brought Batman, because at the time, like we said, comic book movies were not exactly the cool things to be talking about.
No, comics by and large weren't the cool things to be talking about they are today.
Yeah, it's a complete change of stat quo. I mean, DC especially, where they had Killing Joke and they had Watchmen come out, and just you could kind of tell those movies were really a testament of how writing was changing at the time. That to see Batman interpreted in this light, which, I mean, everybody had known the Adam West version for so long, and that was Batman. To see this version of Michael Keaton play him, and how just brilliant he was playing him, and Jack Nicholson balancing off him, and just, you seeing how they were interacting, and just how the Batman Joker mythos had just exploded from there, is just a true testament of just how great the film is. I mean, if you haven't seen it, DC Universe, go find it at your local movie store, wherever you go pick up movies, wherever you try going on streaming. It is definitely worth watching. And I'm going to throw this out there. We're at 30 years from this movie, right? Can we get Michael Keaton to come back for a Batman Beyond movie?
Oh my God, yes, please.
Let's make it happen. And can we get Tim Burton to direct it? I'm going to throw this out to you, ODPH Society. What is your thoughts on that idea?
That needs to happen.
Let's get that happening. I don't know how you got to tweet it. I don't know how you got to hashtag it. You want to do it however, get at them. Let's make this happen. Can we get Tim Burton to direct a Batman Beyond movie with Michael Keaton playing Bruce Wayne? And then definitely hit up the hashtag ODPH with your picks for who should be Terry McGinnis. I'm definitely intrigued by it. We gave you a lot to discuss, so definitely interact with us on the social media. Let's talk a little Batman 1989, shall we? We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brian Wolf from Fair City Fire. You are listening to ODPH, the greatest podcast in Binghamton.
Woo!
Hot lips touching,
Coming back for another segment on this edition of the ODPH podcast. And we got to talk about some more modern movies now. Coming to the theaters next week, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Da-na-na, da-na-na.
This is going to be a bookend to the Marvel MCU that we know.
Yep.
The official end of the Infinity phase.
Yep, and Kevin Feige has said that himself, that this will be the bookend of the Infinity Saga.
So what we're going to do for this segment is just sell you on why you should see this movie. Not that you weren't excited before, but let's break it down. Pad, why should our listeners go see this movie?
I think let's be honest, if you're already invested in this point that you've seen most, or some of the Marvel movies, I realize there's some people who haven't seen everything, or they've only seen stuff recently, or they may have missed a couple here and there, but you're invested at this point. You got to see how, it's like reading the Harry Potter series, or reading Lord of the Rings, or the Chronicles of Narnia. You're not going to read the first 6 Harry Potter books and then just stop. You're not going to read the first 2, 3, if you want to count The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings books, and then just stop. You're not going to stop before the last Chronicles of Narnia book. You got to read the end. You got to find out how that ends. I think the other reason you should see it is that, to me, and kind of what I'm guessing with this, is that this is going to be kind of a bridge between the sagas, where yes, it will be closing off everything that happened in the previous 20 whatever movies leading up to this point, but it'll start to also kind of plant some seeds and maybe start building some bridges for stuff coming down the road.
This movie has got a lot riding on it, because with Avengers Endgame being the movie, the definitive MCU movie, and especially ironic that it's coming back out right before Spider-Man Far From Home.
If I'm not mistaken, if you go Far From Home, will have something involving like an opening scene getting added into the movie or something like that. It's going to have something connected to the re-release for Endgame with it.
Yeah, which is very interesting, I think, for Marvel to do, especially because of the date when Endgame comes back out to theaters, and then let alone Spider-Man Far From Home comes out July 2nd for us here in the United States. So this is where I think it's just an interesting play by Marvel, that they're really trying to really send it home for the MCU in this version that we know of. And obviously, Far From Home has looked great that we've seen thus far. The trailers, should I say, has looked really, really good.
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. There's a lot of questions about what his true nature is in this movie.
He's a villain.
Well, he is a villain, and everybody knows. If you read Spider-Man, you know Mysterio is a villain.
You know that he's a villain. There's also a great post going around on Reddit, and it might have made its way to Facebook yet, I'm not sure, but it's like, the post title had, is Jake Gyllenhaal a villain in Spider-Man Far From Home? And then it's a picture of just him in his costume, and then like every other A-list celebrity that's ever been in a Marvel movie, they're all villains.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense. And obviously, if you know the history of the character, this is going to play into it. And just to kind of see where they're going, because obviously Spider-Man Far From Home, we had Homecoming last time. No idea what they're going to do for the third movie, but I guarantee you they're going to do a third one. So to see where they go with this is going to be interesting. But to see Peter Parker away from New York and now traveling overseas with his class. And he gets brought into a Nick Fury-led mission.
Well, I wouldn't say he gets brought into it. He kind of gets dragged into it, because from what we've seen in the commercials and the trailers, he wants no part of this.
And you can fully understand it. Obviously, he's coming off the events of Avengers Endgame, where Tony Stark died.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it's like a TV spot or one of the trailers where they're talking about what they got to do, and he goes, well, what about Thor? He's off-world. What about Captain Marvel? Not available. Oh, I can't do this. Bleep, please, you've been to space.
Exactly. So he has definitely raised his stock in front of the MCU common folks, should I say? The people of the MCU.
Yeah.
Because he is now fully recognizable as Spider-Man in the MCU by people on the street and however you want to find it. So obviously he is now officially on Nick Fury's radar.
Right.
And my theory about this is I don't think it's Nick Fury.
Okay.
That's dragging him in this mission, but I think he definitely raised his stock enough that they tracked him down to figure out who he is.
See, for me, with Nick Fury in this movie, because this is seemingly something that like Nick Fury could realistically call somebody else and get somebody else to handle all this. Like he could get Scarlet Witch or somebody else to handle this. But for me, with Tony being gone, and it seems like from the trailer that Tony being gone is going to be kind of one of the central themes or messages of this movie. This is going to be Fury's way of kind of using a measuring stick on Peter and saying, okay, I realize Stark had a lot of faith in you, and he believed in you a lot, but like Stark also had a soft spot for you. You were the son he never had. I got to measure you up to my standards and see if you hold up, because Stark ain't coming through that door anytime soon. You know, he's not gonna come running in like a hero at the last minute. He ain't coming. So we need people to, you know, Cap is old man Cap now. You know, Steve Rogers ain't gonna come running through that door either. We need some people to step up for this planet and for the Earth defense. I got to measure you up and see what you're up to and whether you can hold it down or not.
Right, because other than that, I mean, we don't really know too much about this movie.
No.
They've really held the plot under wraps, so to speak, which I applaud.
Yeah, which for me, it's one of those good marks of a movie where if you see kind of like from the first trailer to the final trailer, if you're realistically seeing like the same handful of scenes, they're not showing you much. They're keeping it kind of secret. They're not revealing too much, which is always a good spot. But if you go and you see like 3 trailers and all of them are different scenes, they're like, all right, they're basically showing you the whole movie.
Right. And they definitely have kept this well under wraps. The only thing that you can kind of speculate is who Mysterio is quote unquote fighting. If it's Hydro Man and Molten Man.
Yeah.
And if you know the Spider-Man mythos, you know who those characters are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really know if that's them or not. But you do know that they have established that Mysterio is part of this team that's working together to stop this threat. They have dropped the name Multiverse in the trailers, which I know a lot of people are jumping in on, and I have to be one that says pump your brakes. I am thinking that is a red herring amongst many levels. Pad?
It might be. I mean, from the explanation that Fury gives in the one scene that's been posted where he says because of the snap released so much gamma radiation, it tore a hole in the fabric of space and time. I realize I'm no astrophysicist, whatever-icist, but in my simple, you know, education head with science, it makes sense that there would be I already believe in the whole multiverse thing. Like, it already makes sense for Marvel, like they do in the comics. Mm-hmm. DC does it. It makes sense. It would only make sense for them to bring it in for the movies. Now, would they have to dip into it and kind of rehash, oh, hey, we're bringing in somebody from this universe, from that universe? No, but it would make sense to introduce it so that down the road, if you want to do something, it's there.
It's an interesting thing if they want to bring it into. I just don't buy it. For me, I think it's too much to play up into the emotions of every fan out there that is thinking, okay, this is how they're going to introduce the X-Men. This is how they're going to do the Fantastic Four. And I'm like,
okay,
it's not.
No, it's not. That's not going to happen.
I know. I fully agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen at all. I think it's just a nice little tease to the fans to keep them on their toes and guessing.
If it does anything and they do anything with that, I would like to see, and I realize it'll never happen, this is like fan moment for me, I would like to see him do something with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Like, that would, it might not ever happen, but I would love to see it.
If they pull that off,
it'd be great to see.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
No pun intended. But it would definitely be something that would be a nice fan service.
So you think about it, like, for me, one of the great, you know, the 2 greatest moments in cinema history are, one, you know, Avengers Assemble, and then the charge in Gondor in Return of the King. Like, seeing Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland, like, do some sort of Spider-Man flip through the air and all land there getting ready to fight whoever it is they're fighting, man, that'd push its way into that top 2.
It'd be an interesting moment, I would have to say. Like, I don't know exactly how I'd react to it, to be honest with you, because if you're tying in universes that aren't necessarily in the MCU,
right?
I don't know. Like, I don't know how I'd react to it. I honestly don't, because I'm not a fan of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans. I've never been ashamed to say that.
First one was okay. Wasn't great, but it was okay.
Not for me. I was like, both of them. I was like, did do nothing for me. Loved the Sam Raimi universe. Yeah. Hated Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Absolutely hate that movie.
Yeah.
So if they want to tie in little stuff here and there, okay. And you know, it'd be a cool little thing to see him appear. I just don't know if it's like a long term or like how they would.
If we introduce multiverse and we bring in anyone from those other 2 Spider-Man franchises, can we get J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson back?
Oh, I'm completely okay with that.
Like, can we make that happen?
I'm okay with that. I mean, I just think that this would be something they would open the door with if they really want to go to the alternate timelines.
Right.
Because is this how they bring Miles Morales into this MCU? Is this how they bring Ghost Spider Gwen Stacy into the universe?
I would say, because people often bring up, you know, Sam Jackson kind of reshaped the way they portray Nick Fury in the comics. You can say the same for J.K. Simmons and J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, even going to the Spider-Man PS4 video game, while you don't see Jameson, you hear him in podcast form, and he absolutely sounds like J.K. Simmons. Like, that's been the case for a number of years since those movies came out.
It's an interesting thing if they really want to go that route and do the multiverse, and you really open a lot of doors no matter which way you want to go.
Yeah.
Because then you think, okay, when they do the X-Men movies, are they going to try doing that and bring those alternate timelines? Because that would get super messy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the response to that would be, well, they did just pull Dark Phoenix from like 44% of the theaters it was in over the weekend.
Yeah, so it's just, I don't know. Like I said, if it happens on screen, I'll probably be like, okay, this might be an interesting moment depending on what they do with it. Unless they say Andrew Garfield was Ben Reilly, the Spider clone in the Scarlet Spider, then I'd be like, okay,
yeah,
I'm all right with that. Let it go. But overall, though, Pat, final thoughts going into the movie?
I'm real excited for it. I'm interested to see how they bookend, like I said, the Infinity Saga. I'm excited to see where they go with it and the seeds and bridges they plant and build. I'm also, if that classic Spider-Man theme that they keep playing in the trailer is in that movie, my God, I'm ready for however many hours of that.
I am super excited about this movie. That I think this is going to be the steal of summer. And I think this is coming in under the shadow of Avengers Endgame, obviously. But this is going to be the bookend to the MCU as we know it. And obviously going into the next phase where you have Shang-Chi, you have the Eternals, you have Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2, and Black Widow as the movies.
Black Widow, yeah.
And then the Disney Plus shows, as you're alluding to, with Scarlet Witch and Vision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki and Hawkeye is coming, and just whatever's going to happen there. This is a very interesting time to be into the MCU, and just where the future is going to go is very unpredictable. But they have done enough to establish Spider-Man as one of the major players. And like I said, for the people that are involved in the MCU, like the universe itself, from the common people to his peers that are fellow superheroes to now everybody that's in outer space, because he's definitely made his name exposed to Skrulls when they decide to do that, if they're going to do something with that. He is now risen in stock as Spider-Man into one of the big players in the MCU. And if he's going to be where the franchise of Marvel and the MCU goes and starts leaning on heavy, it's definitely something the character can go moving forward. Because obviously he's one of the biggest selling comics heroes in the universe. Period.
Yeah.
So to see that he's going to be the major focus point as we think going with the MCU moving forward, obviously a rightful place for him, and I cannot wait to see what happens with this movie. I am ducking any kind of spoilers which way possible.
Yeah.
And if this sets up for a possible Sinister Six for a third movie.
We know Sony's been wanting to do that for, like a decade.
I know, and I've also heard they said they're willing to play ball about Venom.
Yeah, I saw that too.
There's a lot of different ways they could go with Spider-Man 3, so they have to get there first, but Far From Home looks like a home run waiting to happen. We'll be there open tonight. We'll definitely be reviewing it next week. But hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What's your expectations going into Spider-Man Far From Home? Are you excited to see it? Do you want to see it? Do you not? Hit us up. Let us know why. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. The ODPH is proud sponsors of RoberCon 2019, happening September 28th and 29th. Don't miss out on Binghamton, New York's biggest sci-fi, fantasy, and gaming convention of the year. For badge details and more info, check out RoberCon.org. Coming back for the final segment on this edition of the ODPH podcast. Pat, what you got for those one-shots?
Oh, got a couple of things. There was a mobile game released over the weekend that was highly anticipated. Harry Potter Wizards Unite. Now, this is from the same folks, Niantic, who work on the Pokemon Go video game. It's much in the same style as Pokemon Go. It's, one of those augmented reality. You got to walk around to interact with stuff and play. A little different from Pokemon Go, whereas with Pokemon Go, you got to capture stuff. This one, you're kind of trying to maintain the secrecy of wizards, that something afoul is going on, that you got to try and take care of these incidents that are happening to kind of help keep the secrecy, or otherwise, us non-magical people will find out about witches and wizards. A lot of fun if you're a Harry Potter fan, so I highly recommend you dig into it. Other one I got for you is a recommendation. Now, of course, one of the games I'm most anticipating for this year is Borderlands 3. That one from the Gearbox software folks, awesome loot shooter, 4-player co-op, one of the most fun games, fun series of all time. I'm recommending for you, now if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, you can get for the month, which is a couple more days as we record, you can get Borderlands, the Handsome Jack collection for free. Now that is a game, HD remaster of both Borderlands 2 and Borderlands, the pre-sequel, with all of the DLC included.
Interesting.
So I picked it up a couple of months ago. I had a 10% coupon from GameStop for my birthday, and I ended up picking up for real cheap. It's great. I've been playing it for months, and I still have yet. I've been playing through Borderlands 2. I've yet to get to the pre-sequel just because there's so much DLC and there's so much to do with it. But the other awesome thing they did is they released a free DLC for Borderlands 2 that is kind of like a setup and the lead into Borderlands 3. So if you're a fan of the Borderlands games, you played them before, you're excited for Borderlands 3, pick up a copy of this. If you have PlayStation Plus, you can get it on there for free. If you have Xbox Game Pass, it's available on their service. Pick it up, get the DLC. It's a lot of fun.
Can't wait for that. That's going to be some exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of exciting stuff, Pat, if you're looking at the calendar,
yes,
we are 100 days away or less than now?
I want to say it's 99 now.
Till when?
New York Comic Con.
Yeah, so we definitely have the shout-out read popping everybody down there. Less than 100 days away, so we are getting ready to go down there and do some things down there as you see us walking around. Definitely stop and say hey. But one of the big things that I think is going to get mentioned down there, because we did tease this last week.
Sure.
It was officially announced after. Definitely has been a little polarizing depending on what side of the fence you're sticking on. J.J. Abrams has been announced that he and his son Henry are going to be teaming with Sarah Pichelli from Spider-Man comics fame to do a 5-issue limited series Spider-Man comic.
Now this is the announcement, of course, that Marvel had been doing last week, where the one day it showed up and it was a webbed Spider Web 4, and everyone's like, oh, Spider-Man 4, and then it changed to 3, 2, 1. So it was the old film reel countdown, and they revealed that J.J. Abrams and his son are going to be doing a limited run Spider-Man comic series, which is interesting to say the least. Get ready with those lens flares.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be exciting to see. I'm amped up for it because it's something different. And I know everybody was jumping in to say, oh, they're going to do Spider-Man 4 and bring the Raimi verse back. I never really thought that. I was like, why?
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought it, but it wasn't until after I saw an article about it. I'm like, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, like I said, we had a poll going on our Facebook page, and I know I was talking to a couple people on social media about it. I was figuring, no, if anything, they were going to add Spider-Man to the Fantastic Four maybe and do a team book there. Or dare I say, if they were going to do the reboot, maybe, just maybe, because I know there's been some rumblings about how they're going to bring the Fantastic Four and X-Men to the MCU.
Yep.
That maybe they're going to add Spider-Man there, and that would be an ultimate curveball, even though he's teamed up with him in the past. But this one, I'm definitely excited to see. I don't really know what to expect, other than, J.J. Abrams can do no wrong in my eyes. So
yeah, he writes great stories.
Yeah, so to see where he goes with this and the direction of the book, I'm excited to see it. It's going to be 5 issues, so wherever this takes place is going to be a fun read. Yeah. And like I said, when we get down to Comic-Con, I think we'll probably hear a little bit more about it as it's coming out.
Could be.
So definitely excited to hear about this when it comes, so stay tuned for that. And to end the show, at least for me, I'm on a somber note. Rick Remender tweeted out that Deadly Class is officially done. It's not going to be renewed for another network. I am officially bummed out about this.
Yeah.
So... Deadly Class, you know how much I love the show. We definitely covered it a lot on the show here. And if you want to get into it, definitely, if you get the chance to stream it, however you stream it, pick up the first season when it's available. It's worth watching if you really want to see a faithful adaptation to the comic. So, I definitely applaud everybody involved with the show. And if you really want to catch up on the stories after season 1, after you get hooked on the TV show, get to your local comic book shop. Go pick up some trades. Go pick up some issues. The Deadly Class is done by Image Comics. You can definitely go into your comic shop and go pick up the story of Marcus and company. And it's going to be something to tide over. Hopefully, maybe there will be like an 11th hour or somebody will pick them up. But as of right now, they're saying it's over and done with. So, thank you for the memories, Deadly Class. And we'll have to see what happens down the road. Because that's all I got for this week. So for Padawan J.
Thank you.
I'm your host, Ken M. Thank you as always for listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. We'll see you next time.